Mic check.
Who's the greatest female seducer of all time?
Well, there have been different seductresses throughout history. The originator, I say in the book, of the art of seduction would be Cleopatra. Now, some people say in history there's Helen of Troy, but we don't know if she was an actual person. But if you think about Cleopatra, as far as we know, she wasn't the most beautiful woman. They have this legend now that, you know, the most beautiful actresses play her in a movie. She's just so incredibly beautiful. But actually, we have some images from coins. It's the only images we have from her. And she had a bit of a nose, she had a bit of a beak, and she didn't look ravishingly beautiful. And in fact, the actual documents of the time never describe her that way. And yet, she managed to seduce Julius Caesar and make him go crazy and make him basically lose everything because of her. And then she seduced Mark Antony, his successor. And these were two very different men. Julius Caesar was kind of an intellectual, he was kind of an artist, he was very aesthetic, he loved the theater. And Mark Antony was very man's man kind of type, complete opposite. She had power over all these different men. So when you read the history and you read how she was able to create, she knew every man's weakness. She was in a position, and this is why I say the art of seduction is invented by women. She was the queen of Egypt, but when the Romans came over, she was in a position of great weakness. They were going to take over Egypt and they were going to run it as a colony. And she used her wiles, her seductive skills to turn the dynamic around and essentially make Julius Caesar her slave and give Egypt a lot of power in the dynamic. And so she knew that Julius Caesar loved theater, loved grand things, loved spectacle. So she got one of her barges on the Nile River, this beautiful gold barge with just a spectacular, it's hard for us to imagine the spectacles they created in the ancient world with all these beautiful women fanning with palm leaves in all these incredible outfits. And she got Caesar onto this barge and they did a trip on the River Nile, and it was what completely seduced him. She created theater and spectacle for this man that fed all of his weaknesses, and he was eating out of her hand. I would consider her the greatest seductress. Since then, there were many courtesans in the Renaissance Italy, in France, in the 19th century, the heyday of courtesans who were really brilliant. There was also, oddly enough, and I have talked about it in the book, this lesbian seductress named Natalie Barney, who is, I consider, the closest that a woman could be to a rake. And the number of her conquests, if you do it mathematical, would be incredibly high. And she had a very powerful seductive skills, but she kind of played more of the male role in the relationship. So, I mean, there are many I could go into, but I would say Cleopatra, and then maybe Marilyn Monroe was, but that's of a different order. Marilyn Monroe was more of seducing the public than of seducing an individual man.
What's the difference between seducing the public and seducing an individual?
The thing about Marilyn Monroe was she was a creation, right? So she grew up very poor. She was in an orphanage here in Los Angeles, right? And so she had a troubled childhood. And she realized when she was like 13 or 14, I think she wore to school a kind of a tight sweater. She was already pretty developed at that age. She noticed all the men looking at her. Boys, you know, she realized she had this power. She came from a bad background. She had no other power except her physical charms. And when she got in front of a camera at an early age, it was like she was always kind of starving for love because she didn't have a parent. She didn't really have a mother and a father that looked after her. So she was always sort of starving for love. And that quality in people who want love more than anything is what often makes people charismatic. Because when they get out in front of a public and they talk in the public, you can sense that they want your desire, that they want you. And it's a very powerful feeling. And it's not communicated through words, it's communicated non-verbally through how they look and how they appear. So when she got on camera, the people who were filming her would say she was making love to the camera. She wanted the public to love her, to adore her. So she was really great in those kind of seductions. But there's stories of her, she lived in New York for a while, where she would go to a bar and no one would recognize her. And this is in her heyday. Because what we see on the screen was completely made up. It was all this makeup, it was everything. But when she went into a bar without any makeup, she didn't look any different, any special. It was a creation. She created this feminine icon of seduction that was totally a work of art. But when it came to individual men, she was obviously Marilyn Monroe, but she wasn't like an absolutely incredible seductress with men. She just used her image to seduce.